Now it was told the king of Egypt that the people had fled, and the heart of Pharaoh and his servants was turned against the people, and they said, "Why have we done this, that we have let Israel go from serving us?" So he made ready his chariot, and he took his people with him. Also, he took 600 choice chariots, the premium ones, and all the chariots of Egypt, with the captains over every one of them. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued the children of Israel. And the children of Israel went out with boldness. And so here we see that the children of Israel, a thing has already been declared for them. Their end has already been assured, and they're experiencing some turmoil in between actually seeing the full manifestation of that. But they are still with faith. It says that even though all this is going on, they went out with boldness. And many of us, we have had at least some point in our journey, 1, 2, 3, I would probably stretch to say at least 10 times, where we've exercised our faith and we've been full of faith for something we were standing on, a prophecy we were standing on, a scripture we were standing on, and at the very least, salvation, right? How many of you know it is an act of faith to raise your hand and repeat a prayer that you never heard before, that somebody died for you. They didn't just die, but then they rose again on the third day. I mean, if it was my first time, I'm thinking through, like, what are we talking about? Wait a minute, all my sin is gone, even the sin I did this morning before I got here. Like, that is faith.
Yes.
That is faith, to pray the prayer of salvation, okay? So even if that was your only point of faith, you acted in faith. Yeah. And that's where the people of Israel were, and they believed a thing, they walked in faith, and the challenge is that they had that little bit of faith, and somewhere it started to dwindle. For many of us, even though we've had that one encounter with faith, we sometimes feel that it has to be the absolute biggest act of faith in order to be real faith. So you almost feel like you have to have this huge moment in order to prove that you actually have faith. But how many of you know that it's not just the biggest act of faith that shows that you have faith, but it's the absolute smallest?
Yeah, I love how Matthew chapter 17 and 20 champions the idea of the mustard seed, representing even the tiniest amount of faith still has power to move mountains. And sometimes we think it has to be this gigantic amount of faith, but even the small amount of faith has the ability to do it. And it's important that we not only grow our faith, but remember when our faith wasn't fully grown, that it holds power even in the midst of its tiniest state. So you don't want to move in comparison to what other people are doing in their faith, what their faith looks like, but you got to operate in your portion. Somebody say, in my portion. Faith in God is never too small for him to work with and should never be disdained. Whatever that amount is, it's never too small. So we don't look down on the amount of faith we have. We just work the faith we have. Look at somebody sitting next to you and say, work your faith, please. Work your faith.
Work your faith. And so they stepped out in boldness. And we look at verse 9. We keep reading the story. They had stepped out. They had at least a little bit of faith to make the step to get out there. And then in verse 9, it says, so the Egyptians pursued them. Fulfillment of prophecy, right? And so it was already prophesied that this is what's going to happen. The enemy is going to come after you. And so if nobody prophesied to you, I'm telling you right now, if you said the prayer of salvation and you wanted to walk with Christ, I'm telling you right now, here's your prophecy. The enemy is going to come after you. I'm going to prophesy it to you right now. You want a word? Listen closely. Pull out your phone so you can record it. Y'all like recording y'all words, right? Here is the word of the Lord for you. Okay? The spirit of prophecy is upon me. The enemy is coming after you. Don't be shocked. It was prophesied to you, right? So here's prophecy. And so it says, so the Egyptians pursued them, and all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh, his horsemen and his army, and overtook them camping by the sea beside Pi-haroth before Baal-Zephon, just like they said it. And when Pharaoh drew near, the children of Israel lifted their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them. So they were very afraid. They were very afraid of the darkness that was prophesied to them that it was coming.
Wow.
And the children of Israel cried out to the Lord. And when Pharaoh drew near, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them. Then they cried out to the Lord, and then they said to Moses, because there were no graves in Egypt, have you taken us away to die in the wilderness.
My God.
This is the same people that stepped out in faith. The same people stepped out in faith. You ain't even get 3 verses. You can't even get 3 verses of faith. Why have you so dealt with us to bring us out of Egypt? Is this not the word that we told you in Egypt, saying, let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? Yeah. Just leave us in our misery. Leave us in our mess. For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness.
So the same people who just stepped out in boldness have now found themselves in a faith crisis. Isn't it true that sometimes we step out and then right after that, there's some kind of experience that we have that puts our faith in crises? Right in front of them, there was something that was very overwhelming. And they no longer saw that same thing that they originally had, or that moment, that feeling that they had in that particular moment. They no longer had it as they begin to see what was overwhelming around them. They believed so strongly to step out before, but now something's beginning to happen. And I need you to embrace the fact that your faith is a journey of faith. I need you to embrace that. And I need you to not get to a place where you are now thinking you're a less than believer, because your faith journey has both ups and downs in it. But yet along in the midst of it, let me say this, God is big enough for your ups in your faith and your downs in your faith. Hello. I said God is big enough to be able to handle even the inconsistencies in your faith. And he's not looking for perfection, but he's looking for progress.
And that lull there is what we call discouragement.
Yes, ma'am.
That's discouragement. We have, we've been taught over and over and over, God is so powerful, and he is. His word is so powerful, and it is. But do not underestimate the power of discouragement.
Wow.
Discouragement is also very powerful. And when you realize how powerful discouragement is, then you'll be more careful when it starts to creep into your faith and when it starts to seep into your belief system. And so discouragement has the power literally to reverse your faith.
Wow.
Discouragement has the power to move you light years backwards, where you no longer remember what it is that you're even looking forward to. Why? Because you are discouraged. Discouragement will give your faith a run for its money. Discouragement will make you question life and its existence. Listen, with everything in you, everything within you, discouragement would be like, what were you born? Are you a man or a woman? What do you believe? You believe in God, or you in the temple? Discouragement will have you twisted. Then you're like, wait, I thought I wanted this, but I don't know what I want no more. But it's discouragement. It's discouragement. And it is powerful. Wow. It will cast, when it comes upon me, it casts like a shadow of darkness to almost where I can't even see what the promise is like. Just it starts to overshadow it, but it's discouragement. So you got to make sure that when discouragement comes, you hold on to that faith that you had. Your faith didn't go anywhere. You've done this thing before. You've exercised faith before. You said the prayer of salvation. That right there shows you got at least a mustard seed. And so you can't let discouragement lie to you. Proverbs 13 says it like this: hope deferred makes the heart sick. Then it says, but longing fulfilled is the tree of life. Yes, longing fulfilled is the tree of life. Longing is going to be fulfilled. That's the tree of life. But discouragement comes to make you look at seeds. Discouragement comes to make you look at dirt and look at nothing and say that a tree will never grow. Your tree is already there. It doesn't matter if it has leaves yet. It doesn't matter if it has a full-grown trunk yet. It doesn't matter if it has fruit on it yet. Your tree is already there. But you've got to wait yourself through, and that means that you've got to win over discouragement. We got a bad memory, though. We got a bad memory, just like they did. They were delivered from slavery. And their memory is so bad that they think they want to be slaves again. When you feel like you were better off with your ex, you forgot how bad slavery was. Because see, now you're waiting on the fulfillment of a godly man or godly woman, and you start longing for them. That's like longing to be back in slavery. Yeah. When you start complaining about the job you currently have, oh, how quickly you forget when you didn't have nothing. When you're complaining about the job that you have, you complain about how tired you are because you're taking care of your kids. You remember when you used to pray to have kids?
Preach!
But you got to not let your memory deceive you. You prayed for this. You prayed for this moment right here. You prayed for this moment where you have nothing in your hand but a promise. You prayed for this moment. You prayed that God would give you a future. You prayed that God would give you a promise. You prayed that God would prophesy. You prayed for this moment. So don't you dare curse the ground before that tree comes up.
It's interesting, like they were reaching back to that place, and in their slavery, they were being beaten.
Yeah.
Somebody was knocking them around, whipping them.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I want to go back to that time.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the time where I was being hurt, the time when I was being pained, the time when I was being this. And I think it's important that we realize that as you go along this journey of faith, man, like you said, Dr. Jaquet, we got to commit to not complain when the moment happens.
Yeah.
Even when it doesn't look like the moment is completely fulfilled, remember that the moment is in process.
Yeah.
The moment is in process. Can I tell you that I prayed for years the life that I'm living right now, and I dare not now complain because I have to get on planes next to people that stink and have to ride for hours. Nobody want to help me. Jose, maybe you'll say amen. You get on the plane and this person smells, and I'm like, God, now I got him stuck here for 4 hours, 5 hours, 8 hours, depending on where I'm flying, having to sit next to this person. I'm not going to complain about the stinky man or woman sitting next to me. I prayed. Y'all won't go with me.
Yeah.
I prayed for the moment where the Lord would send my voice to the nations. Why complain now? Because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Trying to make you laugh about it, but the facts are that there are parts of our journey.
Yeah. And I think what we forget is that your past was trying to kill you.
Woo!
That old season, that last season, it was trying to kill you.
Trying to take you out.
And so the fact that you've now been delivered and you got a short little seed, a little body of water between you and your next step, that's a place to give God praise, not to lose your faith.
Because he's a fulfiller of his word.
Yes.
He's a fulfiller of his word, and that's what you got to keep at the forefront of your mind. If he had enough power, just think about what just happened. I forgot about this, but we didn't say this at 9. But just think about what just happened. He just sent all these doggone plagues, worked signs and wonders to get them out.
Yes.
Worked signs and wonders. Pharaoh said no. God was like, okay, I got you. Here's another one. And Pharaoh was like, no. Okay, I got another one. Pharaoh said no. He's like, okay, I got another sign and wonder. And he was working these plagues. Do you understand me? He was wearing this man of God all the way down so that his miracle could be able to break out. So somehow they forgot the signs and wonders. When they stood in front of this body of water, they forgot that he had done all these signs and wonders in Egypt. And it's almost like that he will not do the signs and wonders now. Let me prophesy to somebody and tell you now that what he did back then, it may not be the same thing, but he will still work his signs and his wonders today. And it doesn't matter what the devil tries to place in front of you in the process of your faith. He is still the God of miracle signs and wonders. And I want to prophesy to somebody and let you get supercharged today that you are about to experience the miraculous hand of God in ways you have not seen before. Send me a Red Sea. I ain't scared because I still have the God of miracle signs and wonders on my side. Let's move. Exodus 14 verse 13. And Moses said to the people, do not be afraid. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall see again no more forever. Verse 14, and the Lord will fight for you. So much in this. The Lord will fight for you, and you shall hold your peace. They're in the chaos of fighting. They're in the chaos of their faith waning. And then Moses, God's man, begins to give them prophetic instructions. I say this all the time, but whenever you're in the process of going through life and becoming who God created you to become, because we are consistently on the journey of deliverance. And we are consistently on the journey of going from one spot to the next spot that he has for us. Everybody needs a Moses in their lives. So get quiet now. It matters who you connect yourself with. It matters what anointing you have speaking into you. It matters what voice. Oh, you might not always like what comes out the voice's mouth. You might not always like the way it sounds. But don't forget that in your process of deliverance, oh glory, in your process of deliverance, everybody needs a voice that can be able to give them prophetic direction, prophetic definition, prophetic clarity, so that you can know how to handle the moment of discouragement. When you're in the moment of discouragement, do not trust your feelings. You ignore them suckers and you go run to the voice. I can't hear you. Whatever voice that God has placed into your life and you allow that voice to be released, he speaks and he gives them instructions. Number one, fear not. Number one, fear not. He's like, okay, you talking stupid. I'm going to ignore what you're saying right now, and let's get down to the root of the language. See, sometimes we're like, oh, I shouldn't say that. I'm going to change the way I talk. But if you don't deal with the root, you won't ever change the way you think or talk. Moses said, let's get down to it. Let me tell you what you're dealing with. Fear. Moses like, I'm your man of God. Let me tell you what you got. Fear. Fear is in there. And I'm coming after fear. And so his first thing is, let's deal with the root systems that's now beginning to affect the way you think and the way you speak. Can I ask you a question this afternoon? What is it that's hanging out inside of you that's making you use language you should never use or think thoughts that you should never thought? Now listen to me, that is not to challenge you from the place of becoming discouraged about that. That's the cause for a shift. That's the cause for shift. That's the cause for alignment. What's in you that's been in there? He said, fear not. He confronted the issue. Then he goes on to tell them, stand firm. The idea here is for you as a people to stay right where you are. The enemy's desire is to make you move out of placement in God. And when God has positioned you in the process and positioned you in the journey, sometimes it's easy to run. Hello. It's easy to move out of position. But the word of the Lord through his prophet was stand firm. Stay right where you are and do not move. Endure the process, endure the experience, and let God do what he does. Look at what they're doing. In front of them, Red Sea. Behind them, Pharaoh's army. Will make you feel stuck. Because when it's what's in front of me, it's looking crazy to overcome. And what's behind me is looking crazy to overcome. But it doesn't matter what's in front of me or what's behind me, but it matters who's with me. Oh, y'all won't go. I said it matters who's with me. And if you could stay in the mindset on a regular basis that it doesn't matter what's in front or behind, but who's standing next to me, everything will shift. It's like, it reminds me, I'm about to run. It reminds me of the Hebrew boys. And remember, they were in the fire. But when they looked around in the fire, I remember the story, Angie, that when they looked around in the fire, there was somebody else standing there. That they came, even the people of that culture in that day came over there and said, we put 3 in the fire, but there's a 4th man in there. We put 3 in the fire, but who is that? It was a picture of the Christ. It was a picture of the Christ. That whenever you get in the fire, don't you worry about being in the fire, because you are never in that fire alone. But if you look around, there's somebody standing next to you. Yeah, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil, because thou art with me. Sorry, all this yelling. Can't do it some of the places I go. Gotta get it out when I'm home. Just whatever is happening in you, know that you can stand firm because he's with you in the process. The third thing he says, I done broke my teeth. The third thing he said is, see the salvation of the Lord. Now, I love this. I love this because sometimes when we're in hard situations, we try to save ourselves. So we get involved in our process of salvation. And if God's not moving at the rate that we expect him to move, what we begin to do is to create our own process. And so we're like, oh, I can fix this. I'll save myself. I'll tell you what I do right now. And some of us, like, you needed money. Just follow me today. And instead of waiting on the Lord because you got sick of waiting, what you ended up doing was calling mama them or a friend to borrow money because you decided that you would be your own savior. Now you're in debt when you didn't have to be in debt. I said, now you owe somebody you never had to owe. Because he said, if you just would have held on and stood firm, you will see the salvation of the Lord. Not the salvation of Casey and not the salvation of Jessica, the salvation of the Lord, not the salvation of Kitty and Maisha and Nashonda, but the salvation of the Lord. If you would just hold on, you're going to see the salvation of the Lord. Can I tell you something prophetically today? I believe that the Lord brought you to the 11 o'clock experience at All Nations San Bernardino to get you ready for the salvation of the Lord. That if you will stand firm, God is about to do some things through his power that has the ability to bring you out of whatever you find yourself into. And don't you get your hands in the mist. And don't you start working deals and making covenants he never told you to make. And don't you go into places saying stuff he never told you to say. Because if you'll just stand firm, look at somebody next to you and say, stand firm, man. If you would just stand firm, you're about to see the salvation of the Lord is coming to your life. And this is what he said. Let's make it immediate that he will accomplish for you today. I don't know who needs to hear this. I don't know what you came to church for today, what you needed to hear, but I want to release a prophetic word today. And some of you don't believe it because you're like, no, I've been waiting so long, it couldn't be today. I've been believing for so long and it just seemed like it's been taking months. I've been believing for so long and it seemed like it's been taking years. But I want to prophesy to you today. I want to prophesy to you. I'm not speaking from my own words. I don't have any words to give you. I'm not speaking out of man's ideas. I don't have that to give. But what I have to bring you is the word of the Lord today. And there is about to be a thing. I love how the scriptures say, and in that very hour, that there's something that begins to happen in that very moment. And I believe that there are things that are about to turn around for you today. Can I prophesy that even in the next 24 hours, I don't know who needs that, there is stuff that you've been believing God for, and they're about to shift for you now. That the way you started this year is not the way you're about to live it out now. I prophesy to you today it's about to turn around. Because let me tell you what it is. I know we used to say it in Sunday school, but this is the day that the Lord has made. And if he made the day, there's power and there's grace in the game. I gotta move. We see
hey. And so we see a people whose faith has started to wane. And so we're looking at a people who are talking, but they don't sound like they have faith. We're looking at a people who are walking, but they're not walking like they have faith. We look at a people who have lost their fight because now their pushback is not like a people that have faith. And Hebrews 11:6, it warns us and it says it is impossible to please God without faith. But many of us, we're reading the Bible and we're like, God, are you pleased with me? Nope. Not just yet. We're worshiping. God, are you pleased with me? Nope. Not just yet. We're coming to church on Sunday. God, are you pleased with me? Do you see me and everything I'm doing? Nope. Not just yet. Because we have picked up the works, but we left the faith. We picked up the work. We're doing all the while not believing. You're doing the things, but you're not believing. Wow. You're doing it, but you're not doing it in faith. You're doing it in doubt. You're doing it in spite. You're doing it just to show. Some people are doing things just to show that God's not going to do it. Oh, my Lord. And I've heard people say it. I tried it this way, and I knew it wouldn't work. People been dating, because y'all look confused. I tried dating God's way, and why is everybody else getting what? You been there, because I got that from y'all. I ain't make that up. I got a man. Y'all like, I went to school, I tried to follow what God said, and now look where I am. You're exactly where he wants you to be. You're exactly where he wants you to be. If you're never in the middle of a fight, how can he make you more than a conqueror? If you're never in the middle of the fight, how can he give you victory? Who is a God of victory there where there is no battle? Who is a God of victory where you never have to fight? Who is a God of victory where he never has to show up on your behalf? Who is a God of victory where there never is a performance? But the word says there shall be. And so I say just get in the middle of the fight and let him perform. God will be pleased with your faith. You can get as tired as you want to get. You can get as discouraged as you want to get. You can get as upset as you want to get. You can get as frustrated as you want to get. But here's one thing you can't lose. Don't lose your faith. Don't lose your faith. You better cry it out, scream it out, kick it out, whatever you got to do. I don't care if you got to stay in the bed half a day, 24. Don't lose your faith. Don't lose your faith. Don't lose your faith. Don't lose your faith. If you can hold on to one thing, hold on to it. If you can hold on to one thing, hold on to your faith. I don't care he don't care how many bad days you have. Hold on to your faith. One thing we cannot afford to question is the fact that he will give us victory. If you begin to question the fact that he will give you victory, well, then now you're making detours and you start to back up or move to the side because you don't believe that he will give you victory. But victory has to remain the focus of our attention. It has to remain the focus of your attention. Victory cannot be questioned. We read in Exodus 14 and 15, the story it begins to say, and the Lord said to Moses, why do you cry to me? Tell the children of Israel to go forward, but lift up your rod and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, and the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. And I indeed will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they shall follow them. The promise to you, the prophecy to you is no matter what, when you get your breakthrough, the enemy is still going to try to come after you. He didn't say, go and put your hand over the sea and I'm going to make the enemy stand at bay. He said, I'm going to make sure that he's right behind you. I'm going to make sure he's still breathing down your neck. I'm going to make sure he's still right on your back because I need somebody to have a front row to exactly what I'm about to do. I want a front row to exactly what I'm about to do. So when he said that he's going to do it, he's going to let the enemy come right after him. It kind of reminds me of when he went and he took the keys to death, hell, and the grave. Because see, he didn't have to go down there, but he wanted a front row seat for the enemy. There's a front row seat reserved right in front of your victory, and it says enemy on it. It says enemy on it. He wants to make him watch you get victory. He wants to make him watch you get victory. So don't you be worried about who's watching. Don't you be worried about who's looking. Don't you be worried about who's talking. Don't you be worried about who's standing by. Don't you be worried about who's laughing while you're walking in faith and they're saying it's a death sentence. They're saying it don't take all that. They're saying it's not going to work in your favor. You let them watch. You let them watch. You let them talk. You let them chase. You let them run. You let them stay on your back. You let them stay on your back. And it says, I indeed will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they shall follow them. So I will gain honor over Pharaoh and over all his armies, his chariots, and his horsemen. Then the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I have gained honor for myself over Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. Your testimony says to people, I am the Lord. Your testimony is speaking to somebody. I am the Lord. I am the Lord. And so then the angel of God who went before the camp of Israel, he moved and he went behind them. And the pillar of cloud went before them and stood behind them. So it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of the Israelites. Thus it was was a cloud and a darkness to the one, and it gave light by night to the other. So we're in the same situation, but it looked dark to somebody that don't have faith, and it looked light to somebody that does have faith. It looked like night to somebody who don't have faith, but it's daytime to somebody that does have faith. And so that one did not come near the other that night. And verse 21 says, then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind. All that night you felt the wind blowing. You felt the winds of transition. And see, you interpret it as a storm, but the way God interpreted was me moving on your behalf. You felt the wind, but you thought it was something else. So baby, let the wind blow. Let the wind blow. The wind didn't blow for 5 minutes, because see, we want the wind to blow for 5 minutes, right? Because we can grab a jacket, because we can withstand the wind for 5 minutes, but then the wind starts blowing for an hour. So when we decide, well, maybe something else is going on, but then the wind keeps blowing for 2 hours, and that's when discouragement starts to sit in. And then the wind blows for 3 hours, and that's when we let our faith go down. And then the wind blows for 4 hours, and that's when you start looking for a way of escape. And then the wind blows for 5 hours, and that's when you start coming to agreement with the enemy. And then the wind blows for 6 hours, and that's when you stop to keep your eyes on the prize. But it said it blew all night long. So that means you got to wait in there till at least that 8 new beginning. You gotta wait until that wind blows. You gotta wait, because it's working for your good. I know you can't see it. I know you can't see it. But every wind, that water starts to move to the left. Every wind, that water moved to the right. Every wind, it moved to the left. And then the wind moved the water to the right. They still couldn't see the dry land, and so they were still moved by the wind. But when it looks on there, then it says, so the children of Israel, they went into the midst of the sea, and now the ground is dry, and the waters were a wall to their right hand and to their left. And the Egyptians pursued, and they went after them into the midst of the sea, and all Pharaoh's horses, all his chariots, all his horsemen. And now it came to pass in the morning watch, in the morning watch, in the morning watch, open up your eyes, open up your eyes, in the morning watch, that the Lord looked down upon the army of the Egyptians, and through the pillar of fire and cloud, he troubled the army of the Egyptians, and he took off their chariot wheels. He made the wheels fall off, so that they drove them with difficulty. It's getting harder and harder for the enemy to stay on your back. It's getting harder and harder for the enemy to chase you. It's getting harder and harder for the enemy to keep up with what God's doing in your life. And the Egyptians said, let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fights for them against the Egyptians. And then the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand one more time over the sea, that the waters may come back upon the Egyptians, on their chariots and on their horsemen. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and when the morning appeared, the sea returned to its full depth, and while the Egyptians were fleeing into it, so the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. And then the waters returned, and they covered the chariots, they covered the horsemen, they covered the army of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them, and not so much as one of them remained. I know your problems, it seems really, 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 really big right now. Really, really, really big right now. But before you know it, you're going to stretch out your hand, you'll turn around, and there will be no evidence in the sea. There will be no evidence in the sea. There will be no evidence in the sea, because every chariot, every horseman, every army, every soldier, it will be drowned and swallowed up by the promise of the Lord, because you will see the promise of the Lord. You will see the promise of the Lord. And it doesn't matter what people say about your faith. I don't care how discouraged you've gotten. You may have got discouraged, and you may have decided, I'm going to take this into my own hand. You may have got discouraged discouraged and you may have decided, I'm going to stop praying. You may have got discouraged and you may have said, you know what? I'm just going to start making my own decisions. I trusted God, and this is where it was. You may have decided this is never coming to an end, and you may have started cursing what God is doing in your life. But I tell you what, it is never too late. It is never too late. It is never too late. I don't care what mistakes you've made. I don't care how much you've turned away from God. Turn around, he's still right there. Turn around, he's still right there. He will always keep his word. It's never too late. They said all that they said. They said all that they said. They did all that they did. But God was right there, and he came through. I want to encourage you this morning that no matter where you are in faith, no matter where you are in faith, one thing that you've got to do, I don't care if you go kicking and screaming, you cannot let go of your faith. You better pull it from somewhere. You better stand on the word. You better start studying faith. You better put faith scriptures on your wall. Change your screensaver on your phone. I want you to write it and put it in every seat of your house. I want you to stick it on a sticker and put it on the floor and stand on it. But no matter what you do, you pick up your faith, and don't you let the devil tell you that it's too late. It's never too late to turn to God. It's never too late to walk in faith. It's never too late. He didn't change his mind about you. He didn't change his mind about your life. He didn't change his mind about that promise that he gave you. You think that you can change God's plan for your life. He's been doing this since the beginning of time. He's doing it from the end of time. He knows what victory looks like. Don't you dare be scared out of the place of faith.